Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, so today we are diving into an invisible, high-stakes sci-fi thriller that's literally happening right now inside every single brewery on Earth. We're talking about a desperate 24/7 war to stop your next crisp pint from mutating into, well, a glutinous, gooey slime. We usually think of brewing as this relaxing, artisanal craft, right? But at the microscopic level, it's a relentless battle against biological invaders.
So let's look at this absolute nightmare scenario known as ropy beer. Imagine this. You order a crisp, refreshing pint, but when the bartender pulls that tap, it doesn't splash. No, it pours like a thick, syrupy slime. It's totally visceral. And it's one of the biggest red flags that a brewery's microscopic defenses have completely collapsed, specifically to an invader called Pediococcus, which basically hijacks the whole batch. But, here's where the real deception starts. Before that beer ever turns into slime, your senses might actually play a massive trick on you. You raise the glass, take a sniff, and wait. You get this surprisingly sweet aroma. It smells distinctly like rich, warm honey or even delicious butterscotch. Now you might be thinking, hey, sweet aroma sounds great, but we really have to ask, why is this incredibly pleasant scent actually a blaring siren song of total destruction?
Well, the culprit behind this little trick is a chemical compound called diacetyl. In most beers, diacetyl is literally the calling card of microscopic invaders. It's a byproduct they excrete as they ruin the batch. So while your nose is happily registering delicious butterscotch, a brewer's brain is screaming red alert. It means the enemy is already inside the gates and they are multiplying rapidly.
To fight this war, brewers have to hunt down what we call bug traps. These are the mechanical hiding spots where our microscopic enemies stage their ambush. You see, even in a gleaming, state-of-the-art stainless steel facility, these invaders are going to seek out the absolute tiniest imperfections just to survive. We're talking poorly maintained pump glands, a microscopic scratch in a joint rubber, or just a tiny patch of corroded stainless steel. Those tiny spots can harbor millions of bacteria, totally shielding them from the intense cleaning chemicals. And when you actually look at these invaders under a microscope, like we see right here on screen, it really does look like an alien armada gathering its forces. Notice those distinct four-cell clusters. Those are the Pediococcus assembling in what are called tetrads. And right alongside them are those rod-shaped lactobacilli. These are the specific bugs responsible for that terrifying ropy beer and that deceptive honey aroma we were just talking about.
Their battle tactic? It is brutal and honestly highly effective. They launch their main attack during the pitching yeast and fermentation stages. See, while the good brewing yeast is just trying to do its job, these Pediococcus and lactobacilli sneak in and gorge on the leftover sugars. Their primary weapon is excreting massive amounts of lactic acid and diacetyl. This completely changes the environment, weaponizing the beer with sour milk flavors, severe cloudiness, and eventually that gooey ropiness that completely ruins the tank.
Let's actually track this vulnerable journey across the production line because the battle really intensifies here. It starts off perfectly safe in the boiling kettles. The high heat means the liquid, the wort, is completely sterile. But the second it leaves that boil, the risk just skyrockets. It passes through wort chillers, which are huge bug traps with a notoriously high fouling risk. Then it hits the massive fermenting vessels. These are prime battlegrounds because they're covered in sticky yeast and hop soil residue that is incredibly difficult to completely clean out. So the crucial takeaway here is that different sectors attract completely different enemies. In unpitched wort, you've got obisum bacteria, which ruins everything by creating this bizarre parsnip-off flavor. If you're dealing with cask-conditioned beers that get exposed to air, Acetobacter is your enemy, turning the beer cloudy and making it taste intensely of vinegar. Oh, and then there's Zymomonas. It loves liquid sugars and will turn primed beers into a cloudy mess that smells absolutely overwhelmingly of bad eggs.
Okay, but let's say the beer survives all of that. It eventually reaches the bright beer tank. This is supposed to be the ultimate safe zone. The beer is filtered, it's nearly sterile, and it's completely purged of oxygen. You'd logically think this absolute zero oxygen environment would be a perfectly secure sanctuary from these air-breathing attackers, right?
Well, here is the ultimate villain reveal of the whole explainer. We are super used to dealing with aerobic organisms, things like molds that absolutely require air to survive. But the dark twist in brewing microbiology is the existence of obligate anaerobes. These are terrifyingly specialized organisms that don't just survive without air, they literally thrive in the absolute vacuum of zero oxygen. In fact, oxygen is actually toxic to them. Enter the final bosses of modern brewing, Pectinatus and Megasphaera.
Because modern breweries have gotten so incredibly good at removing oxygen to keep the beer fresh, they've actually and inadvertently created the perfect paradise for these specific obligate anaerobes. These relentless microscopic invaders specifically target the pristine, low-oxygen environments of bright and packaged beer, just lurking in biofilms, waiting for the perfect moment to strike the finished product.
And the chemical warfare they unleash, it is straight out of a sci-fi horror show. If Megasphaera breaches that tank, it produces considerable amounts of butyric and caproic acids along with hydrogen sulfide. The result? The beer goes super cloudy and takes on this visceral stomach-churning aroma of baby sick and bad eggs. Yeah, baby sick. It is a catastrophic loss for the brewer, completely destroying the batch right at the finish line.
So you gotta wonder, how do these final bosses even get in? Well, even at this final stage, the defense can fall apart at a few key breach points. The incredibly complex pipework of the filtration plant or the intricate design of packaging fillers, those are perfect microscopic bug traps. Plus, one of the greatest dangers actually comes from outside the brewery entirely. We're talking about unwashed returned kegs and bottles that have just been sitting out in warm environments with tiny dregs of beer in them. That gives contaminants weeks to grow and mutate before they ever come back into the facility. As you can see mapped out here, this entire microscopic war really proves one thing. At every single stage of the brewing process, from the unpitched wort all the way to the bright beer, there is a highly specialized biological enemy just waiting in the shadows. Bacteria bringing those weird parsnip flavors, Pediococcus bringing the ropy honey slim, and Megasphaera bringing that awful baby sick aroma. It's a constant, unyielding battle for sanitation and control. Knowing the incredible, invisible sci-fi battle that goes into defending your brew from becoming a syrupy, foul-smelling mess, I mean, it really changes how you look at the glass in your hand, doesn't it? Brewers aren't just following a recipe, they are commanding a defensive front line against an alien armada. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Next time you order a perfectly crisp, clean beer, take a second to appreciate the victory it represents. What are you really tasting in your next pint? You're tasting triumph. Thanks so much for joining this explainer, and keep questioning the science behind the everyday.